The gun was pointed at her chest. My daughter, grown, calm, dangerously still, stared down the barrel like it was a broken toy. The self-proclaimed HOA cop, a puffed-up security goon, kept shouting about non-compliance, while trembling so hard the barrel wobbled. I was halfway down the porch steps when she flashed her badge. Not a neighborhood badge, not a mall cop badge, a black and silver CIA badge so real it could have started a war. What happens when the people playing cop point their gun at someone trained to make real ones disappear? When I left the service, I thought I'd left conflict behind too. I bought my family property back from distant relatives, a stretch of quiet land tucked at the edge of a suburban sprawl, fenced off from the growing madness outside. I imagined evenings with a cup of coffee on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills, the air thick with the smells of pine and fresh earth. Instead, I found myself staring down the barrel of a different kind of war. It started small, as these things always do. The local HOA, which had been a relatively toothless organization years ago when I was a kid running barefoot through the fields, had metastasized into something far more dangerous while I was away. They had a new weapon now, a so-called security force, a self-created paramilitary unit made up of neighborhood volunteers dressed in tactical vests and mirrored sunglasses, drunk on the idea of authority. At first, I paid them no mind. They held their little meetings, posted laminated signs about new parking regulations, and cruised the streets on golf carts they had outfitted with blinking lights. It was laughable. Until it wasn't. My daughter, Anna, had decided to visit for a long weekend. She told her handler at Langley she needed a break, and they agreed. It was supposed to be a quiet visit. She was deep undercover, her real identity classified so heavily that even I didn't know half the assignments she was working. To the world, she was just another woman in jeans and a ball cap, rolling into my driveway in her beat-up black sedan with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a crooked smile on her face. To the HOA security force, she was something else entirely. An unknown. And unknowns were threats. The first note appeared on the windshield of her car within an hour of her arrival. Unauthorized vehicle, it read in shaky handwriting, tucked under the wiper blade like a declaration of war. Anna just chuckled and tossed it into the glove box. The second day, it escalated. A man with a clipboard and a too-tight polo shirt knocked on the front door. He didn't even introduce himself. He just barked that all guests must be registered in the HOA database, cited a non-existent bylaw, and demanded her personal information. Anna gave him nothing but a cold stare that could strip paint. He left huffing, but not defeated. That night, we found a bright orange sticker slapped onto her driver's side window. Violation. Unauthorized resident. The glue was industrial strength. The kind that would peel the paint right off if you tried to remove it dry. I watched her methodically heat it with a hairdryer and peel it off. Her movements precise, calm, surgical. But I could see the muscle twitching in her jaw. It was the third day when they made their first real mistake. She had gone for a run down the winding neighborhood streets, losing herself in the rhythmic pounding of sneakers against asphalt, the thump of her pulse against her ears. Somewhere along the way, she noticed a golf cart tailing her, just far enough back to pretend it wasn't obvious. Two of them this time, a man and a woman, both wearing matching black vests with the HOA logo stitched in bright, authoritarian yellow across the back. Anna ignored them, picked up her pace, turned down a narrow footpath that led behind the rows of McMansions and manicured lawns. When she emerged back onto the main road 15 minutes later, sweaty and winded, she found her car boxed in by two golf carts parked deliberately close, blocking her in. I stepped onto the porch, just in time to see her walk up to them, calm as glass, and lean down to say something I couldn't hear. The man stood up from his cart and puffed out his chest, shouting something about suspicious activity and refusal to comply with HOA identification procedures. Anna simply tilted her head, smiled that razor-thin smile she inherited from her mother, and got in her car. She waited precisely long enough to make it clear she could wait forever. Eventually, the golf carts moved. But the message had been sent. They weren't going to leave her alone. They smelled blood, They thought she was weak. They thought she was prey. By the end of the week, we had received 5 separate courtesy notices from the HOA board. One was for a supposed violation involving the unlicensed operator of a motor vehicle, Anna, for daring to drive to the grocery store. Another cited a fabricated complaint about her loitering suspiciously near the community pool. The most absurd notice accused her of visual disruption for parking her car in my driveway, where it could allegedly be seen from the main road. Each notice arrived, hand-delivered, folded crisply into a standard-issue HOA envelope, always anonymous, always unsigned. Anna kept every single one, stacking them neatly in a file folder she labeled "Idiots" in thick, black Sharpie. I told her we could file formal complaints, go through the proper channels, make noise. She shook her head. "Better to let them think I'm harmless," she said, her voice light but her eyes like winter storms. "Let them think they have the upper hand. People show you who they are when they think you can't hit back." Still, the tension grew. I started to notice small things I hadn't seen before. Our mailbox, normally steady on its post, leaning at a strange angle one morning, as if it had been bumped hard. The fence gate left swinging open when neither Anna nor I had touched it. Footprints in the soft dirt by the side of the house, too large to be hers, too fresh to be explained away by passing animals. I knew surveillance when I saw it. They were probing, testing, escalating. A series of increasingly aggressive trespasses dressed up as neighborhood compliance. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. A few of the older neighbors stopped talking to me altogether. Others would wave awkwardly from their lawns, then retreat inside like shadows when the golf carts rolled by. Fear had gripped the community tight. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules. They were enforcing obedience. And now Anna, unknowingly to them, represented a challenge to their little empire. She stayed cool, methodical, documenting everything with her phone when she could, noting details in a small, battered notebook she carried in her back pocket. But I could see it weighing on her. The way she double-checked the locks on the doors at night. The way she always sat with her back to the wall when we went into town. The way her hand strayed unconsciously toward her belt line whenever a golf cart rounded a corner too quickly. I wanted to end it. Wanted to storm into their stupid monthly board meeting and slam the stack of fabricated notices down on the table, demand accountability, threaten lawsuits, force them into retreat. But Anna cautioned patience. "Watch first," she said. "Let them keep showing their teeth." So I watched. And they showed more than teeth. They showed everything. Patrols became constant. Golf carts crawling past the house every hour on the hour. Flashlights sweeping across the front porch in the dead of night. Strange cars idling at the edge of the property line, engines running, windows dark. It wasn't random anymore. It was a campaign, a psychological war. And Anna, my daughter, my blood, was the target. Not because they knew who she was, not because they understood the force they were poking with a stick, but because they thought she was easy prey, because they thought no one would stop them, because they believed, in their small, petty hearts, that authority was the same as power. That belief would be their downfall. But at that moment, under the weight of 100 small harassments, I held the line. I stayed silent. I stayed patient. Because Anna was right. In war, you never reveal your arsenal until the enemy has committed too deeply to retreat. And the HOA, drunk on their own imagined power, was marching straight into a battle they couldn't even see yet. All we had to do was stand still and let them keep marching. It didn't stop at notes and idle harassment. Somewhere inside that bloated, self-important HOA boardroom, they decided it was time to formalize their fantasy of authority. Within 2 weeks, neighborhood security division signs sprouted up like weeds on every street corner, posted on aluminum stakes that leaned in the summer wind like bad omens. Glossy flyers clogged mailboxes, announcing the formation of an official security corps, volunteers appointed to enforce community standards in partnership with local law enforcement. No partnership existed. Of course, it was a lie, a fantasy stitched together from boredom and too much HOA money. But it was a fantasy they were determined to make real. they gave themselves titles: Field Captain, Compliance Officer, Operations Sergeant. Badges printed from cheap websites were pinned to knock-off tactical vests. Radios crackled with fake call signs, and suddenly the golf carts were gone, replaced with second-hand black SUVs outfitted with flashing yellow lights, prowling the streets like predators hunting injured deer. Residents tried to laugh it off at first. Surely it was ridiculous. Surely it would blow over. But it didn't. And when laughter faded, fear settled in. Notices started arriving by the dozens. Warnings about lawn height violations. Warnings about unauthorized visitors. Warnings about trash cans being left out half a day too long. Every little slip up real or fabricated was documented, photographed, cited. Fines stacked up faster than most people could track. Some homeowners sold at a loss just to escape. Others kept their heads down, locked their doors, and prayed the patrols would pass them by. We did neither. Anna refused. She walked the neighborhood with her head high, calm, methodical, carrying nothing but her old canvas messenger bag and a quiet, coiled presence that radiated from her skin like heat off blacktop. And they hated her for it. They couldn't label her, couldn't intimidate her, couldn't rattle her. So they escalated. First, they tried to frame her. A formal notice landed in my mailbox accusing Anna of harassment of security personnel, citing a supposed incident where she had aggressively approached a compliance officer while he was lawfully conducting neighborhood patrol duties. The included photo was laughably a blurry image of Anna jogging, earbuds in, utterly oblivious to the hunched figure lurking behind a bush in the distance. She filed a counter-complaint with the State Attorney General's office, citing harassment and stalking. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without emotion. When the HOA received the certified letter 2 days later, they responded by tripling the number of patrols past our home. After that came the surveillance. Motion-activated floodlights were aimed at our property from 3 different houses. Black SUVs loitered at the end of our street every night, headlights off, engines growling low and steady like wolves in the brush. Drones buzzed overhead at odd hours, circling until Anna shot one out of the sky with a slingshot and a handful of pebbles from the driveway. She mounted the broken husk on a spike by the front gate, like a medieval warning. I half expected a retaliation that night, but none came. They were still trying to scare her, still trying to test her limits. They had no idea she had none. The next escalation was more brazen. She returned from a run to find 2 men, Field Captain Donovan and Compliance Officer Reyes, according to the name tags they had proudly affixed to their polyester uniforms, waiting on the front porch. Both were armed with batons and heavy utility belts weighed down with zip ties, pepper spray, and radios. I saw the scene unfold through the kitchen window, hand clenching involuntarily around my coffee mug as Anna approached them with the same bored, wary ease I'd seen her use, walking into unstable war zones. Donovan barked at her to present her identification papers to prove she was authorized to be on the premises. Anna raised an eyebrow, asked under what legal authority they were making such a demand. Reyes puffed out his chest and recited some bastardized string of codes and statutes he'd clearly copied from a police drama. Anna smiled politely, nodded, and then asked if they were detaining her. Donovan blinked. Reyes hesitated. She asked again, louder. Were they detaining her? Neither answered. Anna pulled out her phone and started recording, the tiny camera lens glittering like a scalpel in the sun. Donovan cursed under his breath and backed away. Reyes sputtered something about documenting a non-compliance event and stormed off. I stepped onto the porch as they peeled away in their battered SUV, tires spitting gravel like angry bees. You sure you want to keep playing it this cool? I asked her. Anna looked at me, her face unreadable. They're sloppy, she said, and sloppy enemies are easy to bury. I didn't argue. She knew the art of war better than anyone. But I also knew it was only a matter of time before they grew desperate enough to shift from intimidation to violence. I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, the HOA announced an emergency security operation in the community. The flyers promised proactive security sweeps of common areas, parking lots, and perimeter properties. The language was vague enough to sound legal, but aggressive enough to chill the blood. Everyone knew what it really meant. A show of force. A declaration. Anna and I sat on the porch that night, the cicadas screaming from the trees, the humid air pressed thick against our skin. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. Around 9, the first SUV cruised by, lights off, then another. 3 passes in 20 minutes. I saw figures lurking by the fence, line-moving shadows backlit by the sodium-yellow haze of the distant streetlights. Around 11, a figure approached the house. No golf cart this time. No clipboard. Just boots and a black vest and a flashlight beam sweeping lazily across the porch. Anna didn't move, didn't tense, just sat there, sipping iced tea from a battered metal cup. The figure called out, demanding she come forward for an on-site compliance interview. She didn't answer. The man barked again, stepping onto the first stair, and then Anna stood, slowly, deliberately, her hands empty, her body relaxed, but her presence so sharp and hard it could have sliced steel. "This is private property," she said, her voice low and carrying in the stillness. "Step off it." The man hesitated, shifted his weight. I could smell the adrenaline rolling off him from 20 feet away. "You refuse a compliance interview, you forfeit your—" he started. Anna took one step down the porch, cutting him off with nothing but proximity and posture. "Private property," she repeated. "Last warning." He lingered 1 second too long. Then he turned and melted back into the night. We watched the SUVs drift away after that, tails between their legs. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. They were feeling the pressure now, feeling their fake power slipping through their fingers like sand, and the next time they came, they wouldn't bring just flashlights and clipboards. They'd bring real weapons. And they would make the worst mistake of their lives. Because they thought Anna was vulnerable. They thought she was a target. They had no idea she was a weapon they could never hope to control. The trap was nearly sprung. We just had to wait for them to trip it. It happened on a day so bright and hot, it felt like the sun itself was leaning closer, watching. The air hung thick with the heavy scent of cut grass and dust. The neighborhood buzzed lazily. Sprinklers clicked in distant yards. Dogs barked behind high fences. Children shrieked and laughed in the cul-de-sac. Normalcy at its peak. But that day, normal would shatter so hard it would leave cracks running through every soul who witnessed what came next. I was fixing a loose board on the back fence when I heard it. A deep, unfamiliar engine grumbling closer than it should have been. Not the gentle buzz of a golf cart or the whine of a battery-powered scooter. No, this was heavier, hungrier. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped toward the front of the house, just as an unmarked black SUV rolled to a halt at the end of our driveway, its tires crunching over the gravel with a slow, deliberate menace. The doors opened in unison. 3 figures stepped out, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in matching black tactical vests, stitched with bright yellow Neighborhood Security Division patches. Anna was already outside, watering the hibiscus by the mailbox, her hair tied up under a baseball cap, her back loose, casual. She didn't even look up when they approached, heavy boots thudding on the asphalt like war drums. I could see the dynamic immediately. The lead man, taller than the others, walked with a practiced swagger, hand resting conspicuously on the grip of something holstered at his hip. His mirrored sunglasses flashed in the sun as he barked a single clipped order: step away from the property and submit to inspection. Anna turned off the hose and set it down with exaggerated care. She straightened, hands empty, head tilted slightly to the side in a way that anyone who knew her would recognize immediately, that subtle shift from relaxation to readiness. "On what authority?" she asked, her voice mild, almost amused. The woman stepped forward, brandishing a clipboard like a weapon. Suspicion of noncompliance. Potential ordinance violations. She read the words like a parrot, mechanical and hollow. Anna smiled slightly, shaking her head. "This is private property," she said evenly. "You are trespassing. Remove yourselves immediately or face legal action." The man's posture changed subtly, a tension tightening around his shoulders. He was waiting for a reason, any reason. He wasn't there to inspect anything. He was there for a confrontation, for a win, for blood. When Anna turned to walk back toward the porch, dismissing them completely, that's when it happened. The man drew his weapon. Clean, fast, practiced. A Glock. Safety off. Finger hovering far too close to the trigger for comfort. "Stop!" he barked, voice cracking slightly with adrenaline. "You are resisting a property audit authorized by the HOA Enforcement Council." Time fractured into shards around me. I saw Anna freeze, her hands still at her sides, palms open. I saw the woman stumble backward, startled by the escalation she clearly hadn't been expecting. I saw the third man, younger, twitchier, reach for something at his belt with fumbling, clumsy fingers. I dropped the hammer I was holding and sprinted toward them, heart hammering so hard I could barely hear anything over the blood roaring in my ears. I didn't know what I planned to do: tackle him, block the shot, take the bullet if I had to, but it didn't matter. I didn't make it in time. Anna moved first. She didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't argue. She moved like water through cracks in concrete. 1 second she was standing still, the next she was a blur. She pivoted into the line of fire, her hand flashing up, deflecting the barrel of the gun sideways with 2 fingers faster than thought, driving the muzzle toward the ground just as her knee came up in a vicious, clinical arc. It connected with the man's wrist with a sickening crunch. The gun tumbled from his hand before he even processed what had happened. It hit the gravel with a dull thud. Before the weapon stopped moving, Anna was already on him. She grabbed the back of his head, twisting his neck in a tight, controlled movement that dropped him to his knees. She didn't break his neck. She didn't have to. She just made it clear she could have. The man howled in pain and fear, clutching his shoulder, the fight pouring out of him like air from a punctured tire. The woman screamed, dropping the clipboard and stumbling back toward the SUV. The younger man fumbled with his belt, finally yanking free a taser, cheap civilian grade, barely functional. He pointed it at Anna with both hands shaking so hard it looked like he might electrocute himself. Anna didn't even blink. She turned toward him, slow and deliberate, her eyes dead calm. And then she said something so soft I almost didn't hear it. "Don't." For a moment, the world held its breath. A child's laughter floated on the air somewhere behind us. A sprinkler clicked rhythmically 2 houses down. The cicadas droned louder, and the young man broke. He dropped the taser, raised his hands, and staggered backward, terror etched into every line of his body. Anna picked up the gun from the gravel, removed the magazine, racked the slide, and ejected the chambered round with a smoothness that would have made a drill instructor weep with pride. She set the now empty weapon on the ground, far from reach, and straightened, brushing invisible dust from her jeans. I reached her then, breathless, chest-heaving. "You good?" I rasped. She gave me a look, the same look she had given me the first time I dropped her off at basic training years ago, calm, steady, infinitely capable. "Yeah," she said. "They're not." Around us, the neighborhood had erupted into quiet chaos. Curtains twitched. Garage doors cracked open a few inches. Phones pressed against windows, recording, documenting. No one moved to help. No one moved to intervene. The woman had scrambled into the SUV and was yelling into a radio. The young man retreated to the passenger seat, white as a ghost. The lead man, still on his knees, was moaning softly, cradling his shattered wrist. "You're done," Anna said, her voice flat as stone. "You pointed a firearm at a civilian without cause. You impersonated law enforcement. You used threats of violence to enforce imaginary regulations. Congratulations. You just earned yourself a federal investigation." The woman screeched something unintelligible from inside the SUV. The engine roared to life. They peeled out so fast they left black scars on the asphalt, dragging their broken leader half into the back seat, half across the gravel. They didn't even close the rear door before disappearing around the corner, the whole vehicle listing badly from the panic of their escape. Anna watched them go with clinical detachment, her hands steady, her breathing slow and controlled. I stood beside her, stunned, heart pounding so hard it felt like it would shake my ribs apart. The neighborhood was dead silent now. No birds, No kids, no sprinklers. Just the faint hiss of distant tires retreating into the distance. Anna exhaled, long and slow. Now, she said, pulling something small and metallic from her back pocket. A badge, black and silver, heavy with meaning and weight. Now we do this my way. She didn't flash it high. She didn't scream or posture or boast. She just let it glint in the sunlight for a few seconds, long enough for anyone watching through their windows to realize the line they had crossed wasn't just legal or moral. It was federal. She slipped the badge back into her pocket, turned to me, and smiled that thin, dangerous smile that said everything was about to change. Time to call in a few favors, she said. You ready, old man? I nodded. I didn't have a choice. They had drawn first blood. Now they were going to drown in it. They thought they could spin it. They thought they could rewrite what happened under the brutal sun that afternoon. Scribble over reality like it was a rough draft they still had control over. Within 24 hours, the HOA's official narrative hit the neighborhood like a toxin in the water supply. Printed flyers were jammed into mailboxes and taped to community bulletin boards, a 3-page manifesto dripping with desperation. According to them, the incident was a necessary enforcement action undertaken to preserve the safety and compliance integrity of our community. They called Anna a hostile subject and claimed she resisted inspection procedures, conveniently omitting the part where one of their fake officers drew a live weapon on a civilian standing on her own property. They framed her calmness as provocative and her silence as aggression. Their so-called security division flooded the neighborhood chat groups with posts demanding support, citing fabricated bylaws no one had ever heard of before, spinning the confrontation like they had neutralized a domestic threat rather than nearly committing felony assault with a firearm. Some of the residents bought the story. Of course, fear is a currency. If you spread it thick enough, people will spend anything to buy a little safety, even if it's fake. But not everyone was fooled. Not after what they saw. Not after the videos started leaking. The first clip showed the man pointing the gun at Anna, unprovoked, aggressive, unlawful. Another clip caught the aftermath. Anna dismantling his threat with the effortless precision of a professional and calmly securing the weapon. Footage from different angles, different homes, different bystanders who had been smart enough, brave enough to record the truth. Each video found its way into the local digital bloodstream like an infection, spreading from neighbor to neighbor, until even the most stubborn believers of the HOA narrative couldn't ignore the truth scratching at the back of their skulls. But the real avalanche started not with the videos, not with the whispered outrage, but with Anna herself. Because what the HOA didn't know, what their so-called field captain and clipboard warriors didn't realize when they pointed a gun at her chest, was that Anna's identity wasn't just protected, it was nuclear. Federal-level classified. Departmental records buried deeper than most congressmen's financial disclosures. And any event, where her safety was compromised triggered automatic internal reviews and mandatory notifications across half a dozen government agencies. They hadn't pulled a stunt against a civilian. They had pulled a stunt against an active deep-cover CIA operative, operating under agency protection statutes. A protection so serious, so absolute, that even the hint of a breach would bring federal investigators down like hammers from the gods, quietly, invisibly, ruthlessly. Anna made the first move within an hour of the incident. She sent a coded message through her secure channel, a simple burst transmission that would hit servers in Langley, get flagged by security protocols, and light up desks that usually sat dark unless things went catastrophically wrong. She didn't tell me all the details. She didn't need to. I could see it in the way her posture changed, in the way her jaw set tighter, in the way her steps became colder, more deliberate, like she was already navigating the battlefield 5 moves ahead. As for me, I had my own weapons to deploy. The second Anna closed her secure transmission, I pulled my old leather-bound notebook from the desk drawer. Names, numbers, call signs, favors owed, debts unpaid. Not all wars are fought with bullets. Some are fought with memories and obligations. Some debts, especially the kind bought in blood, are never forgotten. I started making calls. Short, quiet conversations. A few sentences exchanged. A few favors invoked. No shouting, no threats. Just the cold, steady voice of a man reminding others of old promises sealed in older wounds. By sunset, wheels were already turning far above the HOA's heads. Federal wheels. Criminal investigative wheels. Civil litigation wheels that spun so slow and heavy that once they started, nothing short of divine intervention could stop them. That night, Ana and I sat on the porch while the neighborhood around us throbbed with the unease of a trapped animal. Lights stayed off longer than usual. Cars crept down the streets like insects under a magnifying glass. You could feel it in the air, the realization that something had shifted, something huge and irreversible. The first tangible blow came the next morning, when two black government Suburbans rolled up to the HOA office. A converted model home they'd turned into a little throne room for their petty tyrannies. The agents didn't wear suits. They didn't wear badges openly. They wore the bland, unremarkable uniforms of bureaucrats who knew they didn't need a show of force to get compliance. They just showed papers. Served warrants, downloaded servers, hauled out boxes of files and laptops under the blinking stares of the homeowners clustered at the corners of the street, pretending not to watch. News traveled faster than any official report. By lunch, everyone knew the HOA's entire internal communications were being audited by federal authorities. Every email, every text, every recorded HOA meeting, every fake citation issued, every manufactured compliance patrol report. It all became evidence. That afternoon, cease and desist orders were issued against the security division. Badges were confiscated. Patrol SUVs impounded. The HOA president, a woman named Lorraine Holloway, who looked like she hadn't been told no in 20 years, was seen outside the office, red-faced and screeching into her phone, before being calmly but firmly escorted to a waiting black SUV. She wouldn't be coming back. Not in the same role. Not in the same way. But the legal trap wasn't just about the people. It was about the money. I knew that if you want to kill a snake, you crush the head. But if you want to kill a monster, you starve it. And monsters like the HOA needed two things to survive: authority and money. The federal investigations alone would bleed them dry, even if they somehow survived the criminal charges. Every hour an attorney billed to defend them. Every subpoena they had to comply with. Every lawsuit they faced from homeowners, emboldened by their sudden vulnerability. It would all stack up, interest compounding on their arrogance, until the HOA was nothing more than a memory etched in foreclosure notices and sheriff sale listings. Meanwhile, Anna moved through it all like a ghost, calm, untouchable. She attended the emergency neighborhood meetings that sprang up like mushrooms, sitting silently in the back while former allies of the HOA begged forgiveness, demanded explanations, offered up pitiful excuses like sacrifices to gods they no longer believed in. She made no speeches. She issued no warnings. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. A reminder. A consequence made flesh. As night fell on the second day, I stood by the front window, watching the flicker of TV screens in house after house, knowing every family in that neighborhood was seeing the same thing. News anchors dryly reporting that federal authorities have launched a full-scale investigation into allegations of impersonation of law enforcement and unlawful use of force by members of a local homeowners association. No names were released yet, no charges filed yet, but the machine was moving, and there was no emergency stop button. Anna joined me at the window, handing me a cup of coffee without a word. We watched the quiet street together, the world soft around the edges, with the kind of exhaustion that comes only after long wars fought in the heat of principle rather than survival. They think this is the worst of it, I said quietly. Anna smiled, thin and sharp. It's not even the first cut, she replied. In the distance, the sound of moving trucks echoed, as families began their silent evacuations from the ship they had once believed was unsinkable. I sipped my coffee and listened to the first crack splinter through the facade of their little empire. And I smiled, because I knew the real collapse was still coming. The ground was only just beginning to shift under their feet, and when the dust finally cleared, they wouldn't even recognize the ruins they had built for themselves. They thought they had faced retaliation. They hadn't even met retribution yet, but they would. Oh, they would. And when it came, it would come dressed not in rage or violence, but in cold, merciless justice, one filing at a time. One indictment at a time. One humiliation at a time. Until the last of them understood the truth they had forgotten. Real authority doesn't come from badges you buy online, or vests you stitch together in some strip mall print shop. Real authority comes from the people who know exactly how far the law stretches, and exactly how hard it can snap when you push it too far. And they had pushed it too far. Far beyond forgiveness, far beyond mercy. There was only the trap now, and they had already walked straight into it, with their eyes wide open. It didn't come with sirens. It didn't come with helicopters or media vans clogging the cul-de-sacs. It came quietly, like a cold front, rolling over a battlefield, invisible but undeniable. One morning, right before dawn, a convoy of black Suburbans, tan unmarked Crown Victorias, and dull gray government vans swept into the neighborhood. They didn't need to knock down doors or shout commands. They already knew exactly where to go, exactly who to find. A full task force of federal agents, CIA Internal Affairs, FBI Special Operations, U.S. Marshals coordinating with county sheriffs moved through Oakcrest Estates with the precision of a scalpel. No one had warned the HOA security division. No one had tipped them off. Their little uniforms, their badges, their fraudulent paperwork meant nothing in the face of real authority. The first arrest happened at 6:02 a.m., when Field Captain Donovan stepped onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, only to find 3 men in suits waiting for him. They didn't shout. They didn't debate. They simply handed him a warrant, clamped his wrists behind his back with zip ties, and read him his rights. By 6:15 a.m., Reyes was dragged out of his townhome in nothing but boxers and a bathrobe, screaming about sovereign citizen rights, while a half-dozen neighbors recorded the spectacle on their phones. The woman from the inspection team, the one with the clipboard and the wide, frightened eyes, was picked up trying to flee in a battered minivan. She barely made it 3 blocks before an unmarked car boxed her in at a stop sign. Every member of the rogue security unit who had so much as signed a patrol log was systematically taken into custody. Some fought, some cried, some tried to hide behind homeowner rights and HOA protections. None of it mattered. The charges leveled against them read like a legal horror novel: impersonation of law enforcement, unlawful detention, brandishing a firearm during an unlicensed security operation, conspiracy to intimidate under color of law, unlawful surveillance, misuse of municipal signage, and in some cases, weapons trafficking for the idiots who had stockpiled unregistered arms under the community center stage. Every SUV they had used for patrols was seized under federal asset forfeiture laws. Every weapon was bagged, tagged, and removed as evidence. Every fake badge was photographed and cataloged. Every server, hard drive, walkie-talkie, body cam, scooped up and tucked into government evidence lockers. And the HOA board? They didn't escape either. Not one of them. Those smug pencil pushers who had signed off on the formation of the security division, who had approved the budget for equipment, who had looked the other way when citations became threats and threats became armed confrontations, they were treated no differently than the thugs they had hired. Federal agents arrived at each of their homes, warrants in hand. Men and women who had once smirked at community meetings, who had handed down fines like candy from a parade float, were marched out in handcuffs, past the same neighbors they had lorded over for years. Lorraine Holloway, the HOA president, tried to lock herself inside her palatial home on the hill. She called 3 different lawyers within an hour. None answered. When the marshals finally kicked her door, they found her hiding in a bathroom, trying to shred documents in a tiny paper shredder, too small to even erase a shopping list properly. Her charges included conspiracy to violate civil rights, racketeering, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice. The news exploded like gasoline poured onto a bonfire. Local outlets camped outside the neighborhood entrance, recording the endless parade of mugshots, the seizure of properties, the impounding of luxury cars purchased with illegally funneled HOA dues. National news picked up the story within a day. Panels of experts debated how a suburban homeowners association had devolved into a militarized cult. Congressional aides requested briefings. Governors issued statements. Everyone wanted to pretend they had always been appalled, but the neighborhood knew the truth. They had tolerated it until it turned their own streets into a battlefield. As for the residents who had suffered under the HOA's rule, they filed lawsuits so thick and fast, the courts had to assign a special task group just to handle Oak Crest Estates-related cases, civil suits for harassment, class actions for financial abuse, personal injury suits for intimidation. The HOA's insurance collapsed under the weight of the claims within a week. Mortgage companies froze accounts. HOA liens were invalidated. Property values cratered. Foreclosures mounted. The once pristine neighborhood entrance, with its flower beds and faux brick walls, became overgrown with weeds and graffiti practically overnight. "Free Zone" was spray-painted across the once glossy welcome sign. Every HOA document, every fine, every fake compliance order became evidence in court. Every penny they had ever squeezed from terrified residents was scrutinized, clawed back, weaponized against them. It didn't just destroy the board members, it destroyed the very concept of the HOA. By the end of the month, Oak Crest Estates was stripped of its homeowners association status altogether. It was the first in the state's history to be formally dissolved under federal corruption charges. The title deeds were amended, the bylaws erased, the covenants and restrictions null and void. No more fines for trash cans, no more mandatory paint colors, no more patrols, no more Karen empires. Just homes, just families, just peace. As for Anna, untouchable. The few who tried to whisper about her role quickly shut their mouths when they realized the agencies backing her weren't just bureaucrats, they were wolves, and she was one of their own. No lawsuits touched her. No threats even dared approach her. She didn't even need to testify. Her presence alone, the ghost of her badge burned into the minds of everyone who had seen it, was enough to dismantle the whole rotten structure. One afternoon, maybe 2 months after the last arrest, after the last foreclosure, after the last HOA loyalist slunk away under cover of night, I sat on the porch with a mug of coffee in my hands and watched the final piece of that empire crumble. A battered, rusted pickup pulled up to the entrance. 2 men in orange vests hopped out. They worked quickly, without ceremony, hauling down the last Neighborhood Security Division sign. It hit the bed of the truck with a hollow metallic clang, like a coffin lid closing. Ana sat beside me, silent, content, a paperback novel resting forgotten on her lap. No words needed to be exchanged. The land was free again. Ours again. Safe again. Across the street, children rode bicycles without looking over their shoulders. Neighbors waved instead of glaring. Dogs barked, not in fear, but because it was summer and the air was thick with good things. Barbecue smoke, laughter, life. I took a slow sip of my coffee, the steam curling into the golden afternoon air, and let the silence settle deep into my bones. This was what victory felt like. Not a parade, not a headline, not a medal. Just the simple, profound peace of a home reclaimed. A land stripped clean of tyrants. A community remembering what it meant to be free. The monsters who thought they could rule us were gone. Their weapons turned to evidence, their arrogance turned to rubble. They had mistaken power for authority. They had mistaken fear for loyalty. And they had learned, far too late, that true strength doesn't need permission to exist. It simply endures. It simply waits. It simply wins. Ana reached over without looking and placed her hand over mine, squeezing once, firm and warm. I squeezed back. Somewhere down the road, a lone wind chime clattered against a soft breeze. Its broken, jangling melody carried across a neighborhood that would never forget what happened, and who had made sure it never happened again.